there, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you that have been hanging with us for a while this year, you know we've been talking a lot about rethinking education, rethinking your family and the way that you look at things, really trying to zero in and learn to think more biblically, learn to address things and see things the way that God sees it, with a much bigger view than just what we can see. And so I'm really, really excited about this week's conversation. We've got Karen DeBeus here to join us, and she is an author at Simply Living for Him and Bible-based homeschooling. And she has a really interesting story to tell about how God led her family to make some pretty big changes in their life. So Karen, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us just a little bit about, kind of where you're coming from and what God has done to kind of take you down a different path in your family and your homeschool?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. We've been homeschooling now for, we're on our 13th year. And we started homeschooling when my daughter was just entering kindergarten. And so we've done it from the beginning. So we have 4 children, and she's the oldest. And yeah, here we are ready to graduate her. And it is just, I just want to tell you, Leslie, I don't want to mess this up, but my thing isn't popping up. So maybe we should start over.
Okay.
Like you said, how I'm gonna pop up when I'm talking, but it's not.
Yeah, it doesn't change on the recording. You and I
Okay.
said, I'm a little box, you're a big box.
Okay. Let's start over then, because I thought I was doing it wrong. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just tell, actually, this is great because Peyton is going to start taking over the editing, my second son. Uh-huh. So now he has to actually edit. That's awesome.
Okay. So, well, I was distracted because I'm thinking, am I doing this wrong? Because nothing popped up. Okay, yeah, so what you're saying. Okay.
I should have said that. The view doesn't change for us. It just does recording. It's the magic behind the scenes.
Okay.
All right.
So I should just, okay. All right. I got it.
So just look at your green dot and pretend like everything is flipping like it should, but you won't see it that way. All right. Okay. So we will start over.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Again, it makes him edit. So, and these first few, he's going to do with Will. So this is actually perfect. So,
okay.
Normally
training over there.
Exactly. Normally I do everything straight through. So there's not a whole lot of editing other than laying something down on the front end and the back. So no, actually this works very, very well. All right.
Okay.
So again now.
All right.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you who have been joining us for a while, you know that this year we've been talking a lot about rethinking things, rethinking education, rethinking the way that you set up your family, rethinking how you address things, trying to learn to think more biblically and see things as God sees them with really a bigger picture in view, looking more eternally than just at what we can see. And for that reason, I'm really, really excited about our conversation today. We are welcoming Karen DeBeus, who is one of our favorite speakers at Teach Them Diligently. She is always highly touted as a great blessing to all who hear her. But I want Karen to talk to us today about a journey that God led their family on that was really a change of direction, a change of pace. And I think that it's going to resonate a whole lot. This is something God's been dealing with me about, just readdressing how we look at the stuff we have, the way that we set things up. And I suspect many of you do too. So before we jump into the big part of our conversation, Karen, welcome. Can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and kind of this journey, an overview of the journey God set your family out on?
Yes. Hi. Thanks for having me, Leslie. I'm excited to share with you guys. So as Leslie said, I'm Karen DeBeus. I write at Simply Living for Him, and I've been homeschooling for, we're going on our 13th year. And I was one of those accidental homeschool moms. I never intended to homeschool. I didn't have it on my radar. I didn't really even know much about homeschooling. And it is truly amazing what God has done through this whole journey. And it's been about so much more than homeschooling. It's really been about our family and discipleship and walking with Him and growing with Him. And, just seeing what He does when we're obedient to the call. So I truly believe that he called me to homeschool, and we're on our 13th year. So we have 4 children, and when my oldest was entering kindergarten is when he called us to homeschool. And I went running and screaming and was like, no way, I'm not doing that. And here we are, we're getting ready to graduate her. And yes, we've changed a lot of things over the years. And we've really gone from stepping out in this huge leap of faith to really now looking back and saying, wow, look what God does when we take ourselves out of the picture.
Amen. Well, Karen, you talk a lot, and I know that a lot of the things that you address at Teach Them Diligently has to do with how you look at things, how you look at the way that you set up both your life and your homeschool. One of the things I mentioned to you earlier, God has really started impressing upon me just big time recently as I've been praying and seeking kind of what he wants for our family. The importance of laying aside the weights, like the physical weights that keep me from being able to pursue everything that he's called us to pursue. I know you guys have already been there, done that. So can you give us a little bit of insight into kind of what God started addressing with you and Steve and what that looked like practically?
Sure. So yes, there are so many things that get in our way. There are distractions, both physical clutter, like you said, the things, and mental clutter. Every day, more and more, I feel like the homeschooling community is bombarded with information and telling us how to do it right. And early on, when I first started homeschooling, like I said, I was truly like I felt like I was called by God, because there was no way that I would have done this in my own strength. And that first year was kind of exciting because I was like a little child in faith. That first year, I look back at this story and I always tell this to people and they're like, what? That first year when we decided to homeschool, I had hardly much preconceived notions about homeschooling, except like back then it was like the Duggars on TV. That was pretty much all I thought of. And as God brought us on this journey to homeschool, and I sort of said, you know what? I don't want to do this, but I think he wants me to. There was a mom who sort of mentored me in that early time. And she gave me her homeschooling curriculum for kindergarten. And I was like, great, I'm ready to homeschool. I've got this curriculum. And so I was ready to go. I was stepping out and we had this curriculum. So I mentioned to a friend that we were homeschooling and she was starting homeschooling. And she said, what curriculum are you using? And I told her which one this woman had given me. And she said, oh, really? That's what you're using? You haven't checked out anything else? I didn't know there was anything else. I was like, this woman gave me this. And I was like, great, let's go. And I look back at that and I'm almost wishing I had that little bit of how naive I was, because it was truly childlike faith. It was like, God called me to, here's a curriculum, let's do it. And when she told me, oh, there's a lot of other curriculum out there, then I was like, oh, really? And it got the wheels spinning. What else is there? The CBD catalog, the internet, thankfully back then I didn't have Facebook or Pinterest or any of that stuff, or I probably wouldn't have even started homeschooling. I would have been so paralyzed with how I was supposed to do it. So I started to look at all that other stuff out there after she told me, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And there's a lot of different curriculum. And all of that is good because you really do need to find what works for your family. And there's so many wonderful resources and we are so blessed as homeschoolers. But sometimes I look back at that mindset I had and I say to people, that's what we need. That faith that like God is calling us. Here's the thing, do it. He would have worked through that curriculum. If my eyes were on him and nothing else, he would have worked. And so I started to take my eyes off of him and him calling me to this journey and started to put my eyes on all the other things out there. And then Facebook came into play and Instagram and Pinterest and the CBD catalog and all these things, and I, in the very, first few years, took my eyes off of that pure childlike faith I had to do this. And I started to put my eyes on everything else. And I started to get really weighed down. And guess what? I went and looked at the local school, my second year of homeschooling, because all of a sudden I was like, I'm not doing this right. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to put her in school. I forgot God called me to do this, and he will see it through no matter what we use. So over the years, I have had to really remain steadfast and always go back to that beginning and say, God called me to this, and he will see it through. Because over the years, I've gotten distracted. And, especially now as we're graduating one, there are still times where I am completely afraid and thinking I messed all this up. What have we done? But then I go back to that beginning and I say, God called you to this. This is what he wants for you. If your eyes are on him and you don't forget the true purpose and you don't forget the true goals, you can't go wrong. So I had to reduce a lot of that clutter in the early years, the physical clutter, the mental clutter. And that's what I write about. And, that's my passion for moms, whether it's in homeschooling or in life. The homeschooling journey is short. Life is short. Are we using the time we are given for God, for his purposes, not for our purposes? Because often what we have in our plans looks very different than what he has. And I never planned on homeschooling, but I see that he has blown the doors off of my plans and given me far better when I trust in him and I don't trust in all the things. See, I think that's what homeschooling moms get wrapped up in. We start to trust in the curriculum. We trust in the way other people are homeschooling. We trust in what others are doing or others are telling us to do. We trust in the planner that we bought or the lesson plan, book and all that stuff. And all of those things are really good tools and are really helpful. And we need those things. We need curriculum, we need plans, we need that stuff. But we can't have it without God at the center of it and really having our hearts focused on him. So I've made all the mistakes, I feel like, over the years. And that's what I share about, where I took my eyes off of him and where I thought I needed to do it in my own strength. And I still daily have to remind myself, this is not about me. It's all about him.
Yeah, it's, I think that we are so bombarded, like you said, with images and posts and thoughts. And Satan is working overtime to get in the heads of us homeschool moms, not only to make us feel like we're insufficient, which is clearly a lie that he shares, but also to make us think that our kids need to be doing more, being in more places. They're not well-rounded enough. They're too well-rounded. We need to pull back. We can never actually find that balance that our heart so yearns for. And in talking to you and in reading the things that you have written as God has led you down this path, I feel like he has led you much more closely to that balance. And, so as you start performing surgery on some of these excess clutter mentally, physically, curriculumly, I just made up that word in case you were wondering. As you're starting to kind of just surgically remove this stuff, that's a scary, scary thing. We're hoarders by nature. I think we may need that. We may, this next child may need that, whatever. How did you and your family start taking those steps to try to relieve some of the clutter around so that you could truly be left with no other props but God alone? How did that look in your family?
You know what? Actually, there was a year that God did that little heart surgery for me. There was a year that Steve lost his job. And it was the year that I started using the Bible as our main textbook in our homeschool. And we did it for 1 year. It was just like an experiment. And it was something that God had laid on my heart. I think it was, 5 or 6 years into the journey. I think my daughter was in 6th grade at the time, so 7 years in. So I had a preschooler up to a 6th grader at that time. And I had spoken at a homeschooling convention in my state that year. And I heard this idea talked about just kind of putting all the books aside for a little bit and just studying the Bible. And I got that idea in my head and I couldn't let it go. I was like, I wonder what that would look like. And I prayed about it over the summer. And I really felt like God was saying, don't buy any curriculum this year. My word has history and science and just use it. And I didn't know what that would look like. And here I thought, wow, this is really crazy. Like throw out the curriculum. So I said, well, just try it from September to December. And what harm can I cause my children if we're in the Bible for hours and hours a day? I can't mess that up, right? Like, what harm can it cause? And, if we find that it's a wreck, the books will still be there, but let's try it. So I planned out this few months span of going through Genesis and just studying from the Bible. However, I did use math curriculum. I always add that in. I didn't trust myself enough to pull everything out for math, but for language arts, our writing assignments, our spelling words, everything came from the Bible. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic, but this is the amazing thing that God did that year. So I made that decision in August. We started schooling in September. Steve lost his job in October. And I was like, wow, God is so good. Not only did he know that we weren't going to be able to afford all that extra stuff of curriculum that I probably bought in September and ended up not using, because how many of us buy so much and then don't use half of it? So not only did I not waste any money, God provided that, financially, but he knew that that was going to be our most difficult year ever, that we would need to be in his word more than ever as a family. And here we were in his word. That was our curriculum that year. We studied everything from the Bible together, and we just spent hours a day in his word. So it was like, oh my goodness, God prepared me financially by not wasting money on curriculum and by providing that we would be in his word. And what I learned that year also, I didn't have any money in the budget to go try to make the homeschool room look pretty. I didn't have any money in the budget to, add in all the extra stuff or classes or, all the things you feel you need on top of your normal homeschooling stuff. And that was our best year yet, because God really stripped everything out for us. And I saw that this was all about him, and my kids could learn, and we could be together as a family without all that stuff. It was actually a blessing to not have the option to add in all that extra stuff. So I say, like you said, the surgery, well, he did it for me. He stripped everything for me that year. And it was a real turning point in our homeschool. I really saw that just having him was all that we needed. Now, that's not to say that the next year we did not stick with the Bible. That we did that for 1 year. And I always say, people are like, why? It was your best year. Yeah, it really was. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to pull everything out. But I feel like that was what God wanted for us for that 1 year. And there are always seasons in your homeschool. There are always different things that change. See, I think that for us, for homeschoolers, we tend to think that we have to find a way to do it, and that's the way it'll be the entire journey. And it's not, because life is never the same. Every single year we have gone through trials, we've gone through highs, we've gone through really bad times, we've gone through so many different things, and every year homeschool looks different. But for that season, when God stripped everything away, it was a turning point for me, so that the next year, when we were able to maybe financially buy more, I didn't feel the need to, because I saw what it was like without all that extra stuff. So it was truly a blessing.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look back, and God is so good to give us hindsight, and we can see so clearly in reverse his hand at work, and the way that he's weaving all of these things in the tapestry of what he's doing in our lives and in our families. And we have God has done similar things where he just brings our family to a crossroads, and because we are seeking him day by day, we end up taking the path that he has us on. But that's just, there's no major revelation. God just says, be faithful day in and day out, and he will direct your steps. Mm-hmm. And it's so exciting. So you alluded to, that kind of cleaned the slate for you. What then has your homeschool looked like since then? With the understanding that you don't need to rely on everything every year to be able to do this right, to be able to do it right for your family.
That year, like I said, I really learned to pare down because in the beginning, when I was starting to I was going to the homeschooling conventions and feeling like I needed to buy everything, mm-hmm. or reading about it online and feeling like I needed to constantly keep up with what everyone else is doing. That year really shifted my focus that all I need to do is focus on God. And every year before we start our homeschool year, I just take time to pray before I write down any plans, before I research curriculum. I pray over each child. I take like a day for each child. And I don't even pray about what curriculum to use. I pray about that child and what God wants for them, and character things that we're working on and that kind of stuff. That needs to be my focus first. And then I trust that God will bring in the other resources to kind of support what he wants to see in them, in their character. Then we move on to what to use, academically. And so I really do, in the beginning of the school year, focus on just sitting with God and praying. And it sounds so simple, but many of us forget that. What we do is we plan our homeschool year, we go and we look at all the curriculum, we do all that, and then we ask God to bless it. Like, okay, these are the choices, God, now is this, can you bless this for me? And instead of doing that, it's like, I've got open hands with these children. You show me what to do. And that has really transformed just in my planning. And I'm a very loosey-goosey planner. I am more of like, let's write down what we did today rather than always writing every detail, because I say that because I did do it all. In the beginning, I was like, the every 15 minutes we have to change, and I made it really super strict. Then we went the opposite way where we had no plans. So I find that I just need to be in the middle ground, but always trusting that it can change at any time. I can't be stuck on those plans. So our homeschool has changed every single year in how it looks, depending on life circumstances, especially now as the children have gotten older, and I have 2 high schoolers, and I'll have another high schooler next year, and one will have graduated. Like, everything completely changes. And you have to go with those changes and not try to keep it always the same. And just focusing on God in every plan, in every choice, in every decision, really just focusing on him. I always look at everything too as, what does this matter in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, do I need to do all this extra stuff? There was the one year where I joined the co-op that I didn't really think I wanted to, but my friends told me to, that whole thing. And I had to say in the next year, like, it's okay that everyone else is doing it. It's not for our family. It's not for us. And in the grand scheme of things, I only have these certain amount of years with these children. Do I want to waste it feeling stressed and like we're running around too busy? And, we're not focusing on the right things. We want to live and look like Jesus in how we live. And if things are not helping me to look like Jesus, then I don't want it in my life. We have to take it out. So I really try to weed out all of the distractions and not focus on what everybody else is doing, because my homeschool is between God and me. And what I do in my homeschool is I answer to him. I don't answer to what everybody else is doing. So I just really put the blinders on, and I just, pray and seek his will in all that we do.
Yeah, amen. We think so often, or we speak so often about the fact that we are teaching them diligently. We are teaching our children how to live much more than we're teaching them the academics. Now, the academics are critically important because we're preparing them for whatever God has for them. And I don't want to be the responsible for shutting any door for my children so that they can't follow God. But with that said, there have been many times in our own family where, especially in high school, where I felt like the academics were getting in the way of every other initiative that we have. And ultimately, whether they test well or not is far less important to me as to whether they live well or not, whether they show the love of Jesus every day, every step of the way. And that takes, like you said, a constant reminder, because the pace of life, the expectations that are put on us, are not favorable to that kind of a viewpoint and a priority structure in our families.
Yes.
I encourage you to look back at the videos we've done on rethinking your why, rethinking your priorities. Both of those really go in line with what we're talking about today, because we do want to just stay laser focused, like Karen noted, on the call that God has put on our families, because everything else is a distraction and is taking us away. And I think that is just a huge tool that Satan has used to destroy families across the country, across the world. But he's using it in homeschool families by the multitude of serving, the multitude of busyness, the multitude of things that we are injecting into our lives in our homeschools that are not part of God's plan for us. So Karen, thank you so much for sharing with you. I would love to have you on again to talk about that year of Bible-based homeschooling and just kind of flesh that out for people who may be interested. Maybe we can do that sometime this summer in our series.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Again, if you will look back at some of the other rethinks, you're going to find some really great information that will go hand in hand with what you heard Karen talk about today. And then also check out, I'm giving you a lot of her resources in the links below this video. So be sure that you follow those, learn more about them, and plan to come and see Karen at Teach Them Diligently. You will be very glad you did. So Karen, again, I'm so grateful that you joined us, and everybody else have a great week.
Bye, thanks.
If you enjoyed this video, you've got to check out Teach Them Diligently 365. Every week, there are even more thorough videos and chats about things that are interesting to you year-round.